The snow was falling in thick, silent sheets the night everything changed. A night so cold it felt like the world had stopped breathing. And in the middle of that frozen stillness, a man who had never known softness in his life found himself kneeling on a sidewalk, staring into the trembling blue eyes of a little girl who looked like the winter had almost swallowed her whole. Her coat was too thin, her shoes too small, her tiny backpack half buried in snow. And when she quietly said those words, "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night," the world behind the man's stern exterior cracked open. Backhand index pointing right if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how powerful humanity can be. Please like this video, share it, comment below, and subscribe to the channel. It helps so much. The man kneeling in the snow was Adrian Hale, a CEO known for being cold, relentless, and unshakable. He had spent years building walls higher than any skyscraper he owned. Success had hardened him, polishing away the parts of him that once cared about anything beyond contracts and deadlines. But something about the girl, her trembling breath, her chapped hands holding tightly onto an empty mitten, felt like a hand tugging at the last warm place inside him. Her name was Ellie. She couldn't have been more than 5. Her tiny voice was woven with fear when she explained that she had waited all night by the door, that her mother always came home, that even if she worked late, she always came back. But not last night. And Ellie had walked alone through the snow because she thought someone needed to know. She thought maybe someone could help. She thought maybe Adrian, this stranger she had seen walking out of the tall building every evening, looked like someone who could fix things. Adrian wasn't used to people expecting anything good from him. He wasn't used to children looking at him with hope. But something inside him shifted as he listened. It was the kind of shift that once felt impossible. He picked her up gently, her cold little body betraying how long she had been outside. He wrapped his coat around her and carried her into the lobby of his office building, ignoring the wide-eyed security guards who had never seen the CEO look anything but invincible. The warmth inside made Ellie's eyes water, as if she finally had permission to stop holding herself together. He bought her hot chocolate, extra marshmallows, and watched as she held the cup with both hands, like it was a precious secret she might lose. The way she blew on it reminded him painfully of the little sister he had lost years ago, the one he hadn't protected because he'd been too young, too helpless, too late. Adrian had spent his adulthood ensuring he was never too late for anything again. Yet here he was, looking at a child who had been left alone to navigate fear no child should ever know. He promised Ellie he would help her find her mother. Even though he wasn't a father, or a guardian, or anyone who understood how to comfort a child. He was just a man at the right place at the moment life demanded something from him. He kept that promise. The first place Ellie asked him to go was home. Adrian carried her again, because the wind outside had turned vicious, biting through fabric and skin alike. Snowflakes clung to her lashes as she guided him toward an old building near the edge of the city. It was the kind of place people didn't look at for long. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like cold dust and cracked paint. Inside her apartment, the silence was unnerving. There were signs of struggle, a knocked-over chair, a broken lamp. Ellie hadn't noticed them when she ran out earlier. Adrian swallowed a rising dread as he checked each room, calling out softly even though he knew it was pointless. No mother. No signs she had come home. And then, beneath a pile of fallen mail, Adrian found a notice. A hospital form. Dated late last night. Ellie's mother, a housekeeper who worked 2 jobs, had been brought in after collapsing on her way home. Severe exhaustion, dehydration, untreated flu. A life pushed too hard for too long. Adrian didn't hesitate. He lifted Ellie into his car and drove through the snow, breaking every speed limit law he'd ever enforced as a CEO. Ellie clutched his sleeve the entire ride, silent and small, as if preparing herself for the worst. In the hospital hallway, her steps were hesitant. Adrian walked slowly beside her, ready to catch her if she fell apart. When Ellie saw her mother lying unconscious, her tiny hands trembled before reaching toward the bed. Adrian stood behind her, his heart twisting into shapes he didn't know it could form. Doctors explained that the woman would survive, she simply had pushed her body far past its breaking point. She had been found alone, barely conscious, with no identification except a worn-out keychain with Ellie's picture in it. Adrian listened, guilt knotting inside him. He had spent years building a company where thousands of people labored in silence. How many of them were just one shift away from collapsing like this woman? How many faces had he walked past without seeing? And why had it taken a child in the snow for him to open his eyes? Ellie climbed onto the chair beside the bed and whispered softly to her mother, as if her voice alone could pull her back. The sight of her small fingers brushing her mother's unmoving hand crumbled whatever walls Adrian still had. He stepped out into the hallway, leaning against the cold tile wall, unsure how someone like him, who had never been good at gentleness, was suddenly responsible for a heart as fragile as Ellie's. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. And finally, Ellie's mother stirred. Her eyes opened weakly, confusion swirling in them until Ellie rushed into her arms, sobbing with relief. The embrace was so full of love that it felt like the entire hospital exhaled at once. When the woman looked up at Adrian, gratitude filled her tired eyes. She whispered a thank you that sounded too small for what he had done, but somehow too heavy for him to bear. He told her he was just glad Ellie was safe. But that wasn't the whole truth. He was changed. Irrevocably. The woman was discharged 2 days later. Adrian insisted, almost to the point of embarrassment, that they stay somewhere warm for a few days until she regained her strength. He placed them in a nearby hotel, covering the expenses quietly. A man like him would normally never get involved in personal matters, yet here he was, checking in every evening, bringing warm meals, ensuring Ellie had thick gloves and boots. The woman, embarrassed by her situation, offered to repay everything someday. Adrian told her repayment wasn't necessary. He didn't say why, didn't explain how helping them was mending places inside him he'd long believed were broken beyond repair. He did, however, offer her a job at his company. Not out of pity, but because she deserved stability. Because she had worked herself to the edge trying to give her daughter a life she didn't have. Because too many people like her slipped through the cracks while people like him stood at the top pretending the cracks didn't exist. She accepted with tears in her eyes. And Ellie, bright, warm Ellie, became a small but important part of Adrian's days. She would visit his office after school, drawing pictures on sticky notes and leaving them on his desk. She said his office needed more happy. Adrian never removed the notes. In fact, he framed one. The little girl told him he wasn't as serious as he thought he was. She told him he was almost nice. She told him her mom said he saved their lives. And Adrian, a man who once knew only the coldness of ambition, realized he had been starving for connection. That somehow, by following a scared little girl into a snowstorm, he had rediscovered the piece of himself he had buried, the piece capable of caring, of feeling, of loving. Years later, people would still ask Adrian why he changed the entire culture of his company, why he created childcare programs, health care plans, emergency funds, and resources for struggling families. He always smiled and said he once learned that the smallest voice, whispered on a snowy night, can save a life. He never mentioned the real reason. He never needed to. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Before the ending, please comment below, kindness matters. It lets me know you're still here, still listening, still believing in the good this world can create. And that night, as Adrian watched Ellie run into her mother's arms after school, laughter echoing through the lobby he once ruled with cold indifference, he understood something he had missed his entire life. Sometimes the greatest changes begin with the smallest hands holding onto yours in the snow.